Povo.
Territoire.
Le mot émancipation.
Zufluchtort.
Luta.
Occupation.
New recognition, eine neue Anerkennung.
Anarchie.
Infelicidade.
Résistance.
Ein independent Ort.
Liberdade.
Utopie. Au niveau des Quilombo, on essaye d'en faire un projet collectif. L'émancipation, ce n'est pas une démarche individuelle, l'émancipation, c'est une démarche collective. On s'émancipe ensemble, on crée ensemble un espace d'émancipation.
I think that it's a different process that you have to open space in your mind and in your heart to listen what your community or the energies around you are trying to say. So I think that maybe this artistic approach means open space, create this creative experience that you ask me. Maybe it's about this: is how can I create space to listen? How can I create space to live? How can I create space to experience something? So I think it's about space.
Es ist ein Teil von einer Diskussion in Recherche, die eigentlich angefangen hat mit der Kollaboration mit Vasa Art Center in Lubumbashi, Kongo. Und wir haben eigentlich entschieden, hier mit Salz einen tieferen Austausch zu kreieren. Zuerst mit dem Patrick Mudekeresa und der Veronique, seine Kollegin. Und sind hier eigentlich in verschiedene Themen eingetaucht, die halt mit dem Austausch oder mit Themen im Kongo und in der Schweiz zu tun haben, ursprünglich. Und dann ist auch noch der Afro von Culturescape viel später, ob wir nicht interessiert wären, im Kontext von Amazonas dieses Jahr eine Contribution zu geben zur Ausstellung hier jetzt schweizweit. Und dann haben wir gesagt, nein, das können wir eigentlich nicht machen, weil wir haben jetzt eine Kollaboration mit der DRC im Kongo. Aber dann haben wir eigentlich mal einfach unseren Moment genommen und uns Gedanken gemacht und haben zuerst mal ganz grobe Gedankenzüge auf den Tisch gelegt und uns einfach mal gefragt, also wenn wir etwas würden machen mit Culturescapes, einfach weil es eine Einladung ist, eine Herausforderung ist, wie können wir unsere Kollaboration mit Vasa und das Gespräch mit aus dem Kongo verbinden. Und so haben wir auch eigentlich so von der anderen Seite her den Teppich aufgerollt und einfach versucht, zuerst zu fragen, was sind Verbindungen. Brasilien, Kongo, die zwei grössten tropischen Regenwälder. Ganze Regionen, wo Leute müssen migrieren oder nebeneinander hingehen, weil gemeint worden ist oder etwas weggenommen worden ist und wieder müssen sich deplatzieren. The Black Experience, das heisst schwarz zu sein, natürlich im Kongo anders aber vom Kongo sind sehr viele und von Westafrika sind sehr viele natürlich Sklaven genau nach Brasilien sozusagen verkauft und exportiert worden, oder? Und dann hat sich einfach je mehr wir uns Gedanken darüber gemacht haben, sind uns plötzlich so wie ein Schuppen von den Augen gefallen und haben gemerkt, jetzt gibt es wahnsinnig viele spannende Sachen, um überhaupt mal Parallelen und Brücken zu bauen.
Et ce qui nous a paru très important, c'est d'essayer d'imaginer. Dans les discussions, on parlait du triangle vertueux, de se dire qu'il y a le commerce triangulaire pendant l'esclavage, qui était que les biens, l'argent venait, et les biens de troc venaient d'Europe, débarquaient en Afrique, étaient changés contre des esclaves pour aller en Amérique latine, et puis c'était changé contre des produits de consommation, canne à sucre, café, et tout ça pour retourner en Europe. Et on s'est dit qu'il y a beaucoup de problèmes d'aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup dans cette globalisation néolibérale, beaucoup de tensions qui viennent du fait qu'on n'arrive pas à échanger des valeurs, à échanger des idées positives. Et donc on s'est dit que prendre ce triangle-là et en faire un espace d'échange vertueux, un échange d'espace d'émancipation serait intéressant.
Zumbi, eu acho que é uma estrela, né? É uma estrela. Zumbi é o nosso Cruzeiro do Sul. Eu acho que nós do Sul Global, a gente vê Zumbi como esse guia, né? Essa consciência que já esteve aqui e que ainda vive no nosso coração, na nossa mente, no nosso corpo, enfim. Acho que o Quilombo tá no território latino-americano, né? Acho que...
Tu vois, le royaume Congo, en fait, il y avait le royaume Congo, c'est un ancien royaume, maintenant c'est devenu deux pays différents, le Congo et l'Angola, et que il y a des personnes qui avaient été prises là-bas pour être amenées au Brésil, et c'est parmi ces personnes-là que d'autres ont fui pour aller créer ces quilombos. Donc d'une manière ou d'une autre, je pense que ce sont ces liens qui peuvent devenir forme de...
As serras, eu acho, as florestas, as estradas, a encruzilhada, o mar, os rios, as nascentes.
Ah, ok. Alors moi, les espaces que j'associe au Quilombo Congo, c'est par exemple des espaces qui sont proches, par exemple des parcs nationaux, ou qui sont dans les parcs nationaux, comme des villages. Et par exemple, dans le travail que j'essaie de faire ici, je pars d'un exemple précis qui est le village Calera. Et le village Calera, c'est un village qui est situé entre deux parcs nationaux.
Il y a l'espace numérique aussi. Il faut regarder de quelle manière les clips de vidéo, par exemple avec TikTok ou d'autres éléments, on crée des communautés, on crée des espaces. Et ces espaces peuvent être contrôlés, comme dans certains cas. À un certain moment, ces espaces peuvent devenir des espaces d'émancipation directe. Et donc, avec tout ce qu'il y a comme technologie open source, il y a la possibilité de faire du Quilombo au niveau numérique, par exemple.
Yeah, actually, you told about the point. Actually, I'm here. I'm living a kind of life that it's not something that I have to think that I will do, that I have to plan that I will do. Because every place that I go, I move something. It's not something that I have choice. So my body, my life, my human being feeling carries all that I have to share. So that's why I was thinking that I'm learning what is this actually, and every experience that I have proved to me that I don't have to do nothing, because my present, I don't have to do nothing. Like I don't have to think about this, because my presence move something in every place that I go to. Yeah, I'm totally uncareful about this. When I was living in the city, I fight for so many things actually. So actually now I'm in a kind of type that people don't know me so much in Belo Horizonte, thanks God. But I think that so many social movements in Belo Horizonte, for example, they know me. Because when I was in the city, I continued this moment to try to push this existence space. So it's the same. For example, when I'm living in the city, I will stay together to the movement of the occupations, for example, movement from homeless. Because if I'm Quilombola person, in the city I'm homeless too. Because the city don't want my body in their space, so things like that. So when I'm in this context about the genocide, black genocide, I'm always being Quilombola. I'm always fighting for this recognized process of this death that is always happening and things like that. So, but as for me, what means this Quilombola process, it's not to be just focus and fight for something, but fight for live for the life as a complex system, as a complex way to live, as a complex element. So it's fight for this space that you can actually breathe, that you can actually live, that you can feel yourself extended. I think that our world that we are living now, it's a world that don't want that any human being sustain this feeling to be. I'm not talking about idea of freedom. I'm talking about space and body and interaction between people that can be not a jail as is today. So I think that the social movement, especially in Latin America, it's more, for example, they have been learning from Quilombola people, in all these, in indigenous people, in all these centuries of exploitation. So if you think about this contemporary context or contemporary movement, they are in some way inspired by Quilombola's feeling. So it's more how these people can understand this contribution, that how can I talk with them about. So it's, I think that every social movement in Latin America have to understand these indigenous and Quilombolas heritage.
I start to learn about Quilombo through this project, and I think that I really need time to figure out a lot of things, but I can say the few things I know about Quilombo really and deeply, maybe it's what's like we tried to have in conversation with Maya, because we was in the same space and we was shared food, music and other stuff. But I think that maybe helped me to just try to figure out some things about Quilombo. So I can say that I have to learn about Quilombo, but what I can say is maybe going to like have this as a background, this time we spend and we share with Maya. So maybe talking about similarity, I can start maybe with this music. We were discussing. We were like every time we were. It's an example. We were in the same space, working sometimes in different studio, but like the kitchen was the space that we were like meeting together and trying to cook together or to eat together, and music was part of this time. So it was like I put my music from Congo, she put music from Brazil, so it was it looks like the same, because we have this traditional instrument. So, like there is one instrument we call likembe, and this likembe, in Congo we have rumba as a like music that we can say is a Congolese music is rumba, and this rumba I think that you have some background to this traditional music, and there is of course a lot of generation of music in Congo, and the first one starts with this traditional instrument, and this traditional instrument is also in the Brazilian music. Like according to what I've heard, I don't have a lot of precision of that. I don't know how they call it in Brazilian language, but in Congo we call like likembe. Is a kind of instrument that you are playing with your fingers, and this sonority bring also some movement which is similar in Congolese music and in Brazilian music. So there is this kind of link, of course. And like right now, Patrick was giving me some music from Brazil, and I was like, oh, is this Brazilian music or Congolese? So yeah, there is this kind of similarity. And also in terms of food, like the village I'm coming from, of course I was born in the city, but my origin village is Moba, Kansabala, and the main food is beans. So when we was together with Maya, she told me that the main food in Brazil for her is beans, of course. So we were like, it's nice, so we must look for beans and cook beans every time. So yeah, there is this kind of similarity in food, in music, and maybe in other also things, but I need to experience that I can feel. I'm sure that there is a lot of similarity, but as I've never been in Brazil, I cannot talk a lot about.
Yes. Brazilian music, it's something very important. For us, I think that it's not just music. It's like music to enjoy. It's a way that we connect with our African spirituality and with ancestors, and it's the way that we communicate with another person, with another time and another space. So in the entire history of Quilombos, one of the things that slavery system catch about Quilombo is the presence of the drums. So it's like drums, for example, it's something really, 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 really important to us. So if you think, for example, the way that some music in capoeira, it's a Brazilian way of fight, we call way of body, it's jeito de corpo. Some of this music means specific things. So for example, if the places became dangerous, you can play one kind of song. If the place, so music for us, it's something that we use to communicate it, the situation that we are living, to the others, the situation that we want to live. So it's something very important. So I think that sometimes people romanticize this kind of thing, but for me it's really have a real sense of practice. It's like a tool. If you use a cell phone to communicate it with someone, you can use the dance, you can use the drums, you can use also another thing. So I think that it's not romanticized, this presence of music, but understand the deep connection that music has. That's why Brazilian music is so powerful.
This is a very interesting question, but I'm not sure that I will be able, for instance, to give a good answer. Why? Because I think that
it's a deeply experience like Quilombo. For me, like now, I talk a lot with Maya, and I talk a lot with some people who come from Calera who have been visited Calera. So I think and figure out that it's a big topic and how I can use it artistically. For instance, I'm trying to figure out to research a way, but I think it's very deeply subject, and we need, of course, to. That's why first I want to use conversation as a way, but I think that I will really be interested in a way of course, this question you want. I want also to resolve it, like for myself, because. There is a part of myself that told me, okay, maybe we just talk about it because, it's about human. It's not something that we need to, to have a method to have. I don't know if there is a specific method. I don't know if there is a specific material that I can use. But I think that we must find a good way of talking about it because people are dying. People was killed and they are still killed. So it's not easy.
I think that if you think in religious terms, you are an African person, you know that we have a lot way to live religion. But I think that if you think about to be a black person or to be black in this world, you are talking about a death experience. Especially for us from diaspora, it's like the death experience. In Brazil, we live this presence of the death also. And I think that religious is something that you can cross this understanding. So I'm just telling that talk about religion is not easy, but recognize the importance of religion in your life, it's easy. So I think that is that. So you will find religious people, you find people with a high level of spirituality. You will find this in Quilombola community, especially if you are thinking about this relationship with what Western call the nature. So, because actually it's the place that our energies came from the earth. So you are connected with the earth, I think. Yeah, for me it's like my work is very inspired and deeply related to Afro-Brazilian religions, of course. And what I try to do in my work is think about this connection with this religious culture in a kind of philosophical way. So in a kind of way of thinker, way of living, way of came into this world relationship. So, for example, in this work here, I'm working about the power of the silent and something about the connection between silent and the Tatik, I think, War Tatik. So I have been learning, for example, with Iemonja, with Oshun. That is it's my approach, I think. And also with another animals and things like that. So basically, it's that the religions teach me some philosophical principles to understand myself and the world. And I'm here in Switzerland researching about water, about this three-continental thinking, and I was in Lago Mio. It's at Ticino, Switzerland state, and I became very closer to this lake. I felt very powerful, and it's a lake that receives waters from all Switzerland. So, as an artist, I have this connection with water. It's my artistic research, and now I have been feeling and also drawing and paintings, and made something with this feeling that I'm living here.
So what I'm trying to figure out, it's about this green colonialism. You know, there is in Africa and in Latin America this problem of national parks, and the way they create national parks in Europe or in Western, it's different of the way they are trying to create national park in Africa. Like in Congo, if I can talk about the Congo example, there is this village which is near Lubumbashi. It's called Kalera. So Kalera, it's a village in between two national parks, and in the way they are creating national parks in Congo, they need to put out people. But in Europe it's different, because in Europe they are trying to put together the community to the way of they can keep this patrimoine, if I can say. So it's like in Europe there is this complicity in between community and the guy who wants to create this national park. But in Africa the narrative is different. In Africa people are killing the nature, and they don't want to create this way of creating national park, like to make the community in these topics and to try to figure out how they can together build a way that the nature can be protected. So it's like there is, of course, there is this idea that there is not indigenous knowledge. And I think for me there is some indigenous knowledge that help us to keep the nature for a long time. So now they want to make us see that there is not a good there is not any knowledge of nature protection, but there is. And I think that is in this way that we need to talk about this resistance in terms of knowledge, in terms of practice, and in terms, of course, of living, because people need place to live. So if they don't have a place, so how we can live? So I think it's about this green colonialism and the way that they are trying to convince all the opinion that there is just only one way of perception.
In Quilombo we have so many artistic approach, I think, because it's about a way of life. So in Quilombo, to be an artist, it's not the same that Western thinks that is to be an artist. So everybody has feelings, everybody has emotion, everybody has thinker. So in Quilombo we work with this to talk, to create our children, and also to make art. So to make art. Se é artista ou se faz arte, né? E no Quilombo a arte não é uma coisa especializada. Então você é carpinteiro e escultor, e você é dona de casa e pintora, e você é cantora e lavadeira, e você entende? Então, but I don't have a kind of materials that I work with. I have more feelings that I have, emotional relationship that I create with a space, with people, with another bodies around me. So if I have to say that I have a kind of material, will be my own mind, my own heart, my own body. That's my tools to work. So everything that I made after that came from this place, that it's a place that have so many points of view. To be a woman, to be black, to be a quilombola person, it's all in my body. So my art, I think that it's a kind of express of all this that you can say that I am.
I start discussing with people, and I think through those discussions, I can try to figure out some I can say some protests maybe, or some conversation around this topic, and with this word I can try to work with text, like to put those videos in some text and to try to take some great idea, outline some great idea, and to try to put it, like to give it to people.
Not for instance, I think, like, for instance, me, what I'm trying to figure out is like to start conversation. As I told you, in Congo we don't have a lot of documentation about Quilombo. Even here in Brazil, in Switzerland, there is not a lot of documentation in Brazil. So what I'm trying to do is like to start a conversation with people who has been in Brazil or in Calera, because I'm trying to compare the Quilombo situation of one situation in Congo, which is from this village, and there is this idea of resistance. So I'm trying to talk with people to try to figure out, and of course, if we have this chance to go at this place like in Brazil or in Congo, I will be, of course, you know, Congo is a big country, and I've never been in Calera, so I just try to discuss with people who was there, but I need to experience those places, that to be sure and to have deeply connection with this community.
Je pense qu'à un certain moment, ce n'est pas un projet qui s'arrête avec l'exposition ici. Donc on est ouvert à des possibilités d'intégrer d'autres parties, mais aussi d'autres parties en Amérique latine. Le projet est tricontinental, je crois qu'il n'est pas trinational, parce que les frontières nationales sont des constructions justement contre lesquelles la notion de Quilombo essaye de s'émanciper. Donc je pense voir que c'est Congo selon les limites que l'État congolais le fait, c'est justement ne pas être entièrement dans l'esprit de Quilombo. Donc nous sommes ouverts, pour répondre clairement à ta question, nous sommes ouverts à des collaborations avec l'Angola, mais aussi avec, pourquoi pas, la Colombie, qui a une grande population d'origine africaine, ou les Caraïbes, et tout ça. C'est d'essayer de réfléchir cette circulation et d'essayer d'en faire un modèle vertueux.
Die Vision ist halt immer ein offener Austausch. Das ist eigentlich das meiste, was man wünschen kann. Ich meine, ich würde in keiner Art und Weise versuchen, eitel zu sein, zu sagen, dass ich etwas selber contributen kann. Aber ich glaube einfach, wenn wir aus verschiedenen Backgrounds und aus verschiedenen Ländern uns dem Thema irgendwie annähern, durch auch Leute wie Maya, die genau aus noch kommt, und Paul Nazareth, dass wir einfach können, vielleicht wenn wir dann in Kongo gehen, das Thema vielleicht nochmal durch eine ganz andere Perspektive anbeleuchten. Und dann, was ganz spannend ist, ich habe mit Fernanda Brenner, die das Pivo Kunstzentrum in São Paulo führt. Das ist einer der wichtigsten Kunstzentren. Sie hat sich jetzt auch noch einverstanden gegeben, dass dann das Projekt sozusagen im 3. Jahr dann kann zurück oder nach Brasilien gehen und in São Paulo behandelt werden. Und dort ist eine ganz spannende Diskussion geworden. Dort auch noch das Thema, dass sehr viele wichtige Texte immer noch nicht übersetzt sind, aber viele sind noch in Portugiesisch. wo die Themen überhaupt mal von lebenden Leuten beschrieben worden ist, was wichtig ist. Es gibt viele Sachen, wo ein internationales Publikum gar keinen Zugang hat, weil es nicht übersetzt worden ist. Oder? Das heisst, ich hoffe auch noch langfristig, dass wir dann durch das auch noch durch die brasilianischen Partner dann noch vor allem noch zu Material kommen können, wo vielleicht wirklich noch durch Übersetzungsarbeit und durch Publikationen könnte noch mal ganz ein anderes Publikum kriegen.